Is that Catherine's heartbeat? They're breathing in sync.
They trick on you.
What's going on, everyone? Welcome to an episode of Renegade Marquee on the Renegade Pop Culture Podcast Network. My name is Mike. I'll be your host this evening. Joining me is the Super Saiyan death metal god, Nick.
Rest in peace and horns up to William Friedkin. Rest in peace, you absolute genius of a filmmaker. You are missed.
Indeed. So, yeah.
I say all of that in mind because, as you can tell by the title of this episode, we are talking about The Exorcist Believer today.
Yes. Now, I will say this: the only reason, or one of the reasons, why this episode is a bit on the late side is I was supposed to see this movie opening weekend, but because I got sick and other things just kind of got in the way, we had to push this one back. But this is before we get to our thoughts on the movie, let's kind of back up a minute and talk about some of the other Exorcist movies, particularly, I would say, arguably one of the greatest horror films of all time. Is that how you would describe the original?
Absolutely. I have a lot of history with the original 1973 movie. I stand by this 100% when I tell people The Exorcist is a masterpiece, and it still holds up. I would even go as far as to say it's probably my favorite horror movie of all time, maybe even my favorite movie, period. I just think that we've been so inundated with either the type of horror that's just too jump scare based, a la a lot of the Conjuring spinoffs like The Nun, or if we want to go completely in the other direction towards the more gross out torture porn side of extreme horror. Cool if I go over just kind of some of my history and memories of just watching it, I guess.
Sure.
Yes, because my grandma tried talking me out of watching it when I want to say I was in the 7th grade. She actually went on a date with my grandpa to go see it back in the day. And she said it was so scary that she refused to watch it ever again. And I kind of just kept hearing claims based off of the reputation that it obviously has, the history of what happened on set during the making of that movie. I honestly wouldn't have watched it until I want to say maybe 5-6-ish years later, and I absolutely loved the hell out of it. Honestly, my preferred version to watch of it is still the director's cut, really, especially because, well, we'll get to it in a minute, but because of how much it ties into Exorcist 3. But when I watched it for the first time, yes, it was absolutely scary, and I thought it was super well made. But on repeat viewings, if you really think about it, The Exorcist is the most pro-God movie, like pro-God horror movie, that you'll probably ever see. Like, not once is this movie trying to make Satanism look edgy or cool, but it still has like this evil aura around it. But at the same time, I was even reading a couple of weeks ago how basically people from the Catholic community were writing these articles really praising the portrayal of the priests and the entire religion throughout the movie, which I don't know if you feel the same way, man, but honestly, this is probably the most if you wanted to convert somebody to Christianity, just show them a copy of The Exorcist. Like, would you agree with me on that, man?
Honestly, yeah. I'm a little bit embarrassed to say that before this year, I had never seen The Exorcist in its entirety, and I was trying to save my first time watch to see it in theaters, but unfortunately, I never got that chance. So I did watch it before seeing the sequel, and yeah, I don't really have anything else original to say about this movie other than it's earned its reputation in every possible way.
I am going to add another thing to kind of add this to the conversation, which this kind of ties into my last point at the same time. But I'm going to say this as a huge hot take to kind of combine it with Exorcist 3. I'm going to make the argument The Exorcist is not about Regan. If you really think about it, it's really Damien Karras' story, because we follow him pretty much throughout the majority of this movie. It's his story we follow, with his struggle with faith and his belief in science and psychiatry, and feeling responsible for the loss of his elderly mother, and feeling that he wasn't there to be of more help for her when she needed it. And that just kind of adds to the scary factor. Like, to add to it even more, he's never once familiar with Regan prior to the demon. We only see him on set with Chris McNeil in the first like 15-20 minutes of the movie. And by the time he actually does meet Regan, she's already gone at that point. So like, not once is this movie trying to convert people to the dark side or anything. If anything, The Exorcist is really about how when you struggle with anything dark throughout your life, sometimes you just need that. You need to really just overcome it. In the case of Damien Karras, obviously it was his faith and, you know, him exorcising the demon out of Regan that obviously brought him back, but unfortunately led to his death. I am going to say this because I told you not to watch this. I do have comments about Exorcist 2.
I was actually going to ask, because you brought up how really Exorcist 1 and 3 are Damien's story. Do you think one of the reasons why The Heretic is just not worth it is because it makes the mistake of following Regan when her story is pretty much finished after the first film?
No, the problem with Exorcist 2 is just that it's too weird for its own good. It's shockingly boring. It doesn't really put that much of an effort in to be scary, and it has way too many weird sci-fi elements throughout it to be an Exorcist sequel. That in mind, the Ennio Morricone score is actually not bad, but that's as much as I have to say about Exorcist 2. Just, it's not good. I don't feel like I'm adding much to the conversation saying that, but don't watch Exorcist 2. If anything, we both can't recommend Exorcist 3 enough to people.
I actually heard a hot take recently that some people feel that Exorcist 3 is a better movie than the first Exorcist. I don't know if I'm ready to go there, and keep in mind I've only seen the theatrical cut.
Honestly, I would say, just if you want a proper continuation of the original, the only part I will back people up on is I would say this is almost as scary as the first Exorcist movie, I would argue, just kind of without giving a beat by beat plot breakdown or just being super long-winded about it. It's really a continuation of that last scene in the director's cut with Kinderman and Father Dyer's friendship. And this time, really, it's just a really compelling murder crime mystery with a demon in it. In this case, the demon being inside Damien still, but also with the Gemini killer, with, I would personally argue, a borderline Tony Collette level snub of a performance out of Brad Dourif as the Gemini killer. He is phenomenal in this goddamn movie. He commands the screen. He sells every line of dialogue, and he's absolutely terrifying in this movie.
Oh my God, yes. That was a point that I was going to make. That Brad Dourif is like, if nothing else, he is like the scene stealer. But that also isn't meant to discredit what a great job George C. Scott does as Kinderman.
Oh, he's fantastic in the movie, and shockingly, George C. Scott was actually nominated for a Razzie for this movie.
Yeah, I don't know what to say to that.
I would say it's blasphemous. I would legitimately say that.
Blasphemy is kind of par for the course with the Razzies.
Yeah, and I also have to bring this up. It also has an example of how to do a jump scare that's legitimately part of the story and the thing you're supposed to be scared of in the first place. You all know which scene I'm talking about, and if you haven't, just, again, go watch Exorcist 3 right now. Listen to the rest of this episode, but if you learn anything from it, is watch The Exorcist 3. It is an awesome double feature to go along with the original. Can't recommend it enough. And if you break it down properly, it's really a proper conclusion to Damien's story, and the only sequel in this series worth watching. 90s studio interference and all. I'll just kind of blow through this. I didn't watch the Fox TV series from 2016. I hear nothing but good things about it, but
Same.
I haven't gotten around to watching it. I also have no real opinion or desire to rewatch either version of the prequel. It just ultimately feels like a waste of time, since they're two different versions of the same story that ends up at the same conclusion of Father Merrin fighting the demon that possesses Regan.
The only thing I have to say, just from an outsider's perspective regarding the two Exorcist prequels, is it kind of reminds me of what happened to Zack Snyder's Justice League, and how we have like the Whedon version versus what ended up on HBO Max. And I'm sure that's a more common occurrence than even these two examples, but it was just one of those things that like instantly stood out to me when doing some research for this franchise.
Yeah, that I would say it's fair. So in this case, I'm going to ask you this. How did you feel about Universal and Peacock buying up the rights to even make these sequels? Because the thing that I'm going to bear our listeners in mind with, we are getting two more of these movies on top of Exorcist Believer. So, like, I guess, what was your reaction and just kind of general impressions going into this movie?
So it's not like I don't understand why they did this, because give me a second while I pull up the box office for well, the entire Blumhouse Halloween trilogy. So the first one in 2018, directed by David Gordon Green, made 159 million on a $10 million budget and grossed like 260 million worldwide. That, of course, resulted in the sequels, Halloween Kills and Halloween Ends. So because those movies made like a shit ton of money, Universal's like, hey, you know what? We're going to do the same thing, but this time for Exorcist. My biggest reservation at the time was these are two different genres. Like, I don't know how I feel about David Gordon Green being pigeonholed into being the horror guy, specifically rebooting these like legacy titles.
So for me, I felt very mixed, like very cold and cynical, which is a natural reaction these days when it comes to reboots and remakes and remake-wools.
Of course.
I stand by it. I still do think David Gordon Green's 2018 Halloween is a great Halloween movie on its own merits. And it can go as a double feature with the original Halloween. I still stand by that. Doesn't help that Kills absolutely sucked. I do not understand the fan base that one has, but as is tradition with the Halloween sequels, they never know when to just stop making sequels when it could have ended perfectly at the previous movie. And ends just is what it is at this point. I've just kind of accepted it. I don't think it's nearly as bad as some people have made it out to be, though. But it's not like it was in incapable hands from a director's standpoint. I would have been more concerned when I saw that Scott Teems was writing this, and I'm more concerned with him being involved as a writer, especially after the response to the Firestarter remake, which I'm eternally grateful I've avoided that like the plague.
Same.
So with that in mind, how does The Exorcist Believer hold up? Honestly, I'm going to say this, and I do not intend to sound like OMG angry reviewer or melodramatic about this, but I'm going to be honest. Even with the negative reviews coming in the week leading up to the movie, I wanted to give this a chance and judge it on its own merits. This is my worst movie of 2023.
It's at the bottom of my list as well.
Even with the lowest of expectations of it's got to at least be better than 2, it still blew it. So before tearing this limb from limb, I'm going to be comparing this a lot to the 1973 film, because the thing you got to bear in mind is that this is a direct sequel and it's disregarding everything since, which I think, again, it's a crime considering how good Exorcist 3 is, but I digress. If we're going to hold direct sequels accountable to rules established by its original, this is going to be no exception. It's an unavoidable curse at this point. Mike, do you have any pros that you want to name? I really just have 2.
Assuming we're not sharing those 2, one of the pros I think is the performances. I think Leslie Odom Jr. does a great job as basically the lead of the film. And yeah, I do think the children who played Angela and Catherine did a good job as well. And again, I don't think David Gordon Green is a bad director. Far from it. He's, I understand why he thought he was a good fit for the material. And that's really about as positive as I can go.
So I'm going to back you up on that, because my first point was for a movie that I didn't like, the actors really do try their best to elevate the material here. Leslie Odom Jr. really is trying his best with it, and he does a good job as a leading man. I do like him as an actor from what I've seen of him in this movie. I haven't seen him in much, to be honest. I do know he was in the Knives Out sequel, but I think this might be the first horror movie that he's done. But I did buy him as this father character, and even his daughter in the first quarter of the movie. More on that in just a moment, but she's a solid child actor here. My thing is, I think that they should have been purely the focus of the movie, because the other family's not doing the script any favors whatsoever.
Yeah, I'll just to springboard off that point.
No.
I didn't really care for Catherine's family. I thought I thought they were they felt like those like backseat drivers. You know, whenever you're on like those road trips and you've been with those people before who are not being very helpful. They're just kind of getting in the way.
I'm actually going to say this instead. I'm just going to quote Jeremy Johns' video on this in this case. They're so underdeveloped, and this will be a point I eventually bring up. They might as well have been called the Who Gives a Shits. I'll touch more on that in a minute, but my other positive, just to get it out of the way as well, I will agree with a lot of people's reviews that the first quarter of the movie genuinely isn't bad. Dare I say, it could have worked just as its own reworked missing person horror movie, or just a straightforward thriller, even not an Exorcist sequel. At the very least, it does a good job holding your attention, but once the girls are found, the movie really starts to nosedive from dull to stupid to flat out bafflingly bad, insulting, then back to just sucking.
We'll get to that devolution in a second, but I actually will agree. Probably either like the first half or the first quarter. It does do a good job of holding your attention. So my question is for you: at what point do the cracks start to form?
Once we get past the hospital sequence and straight into the possession, because guys, if you want to hear more positives, you're not getting any more for the rest of this podcast, because we're gonna tear this movie's fucking head off. Because I have so many points to make throughout all of this. I have 5 literally listed off. So, Mike, if you ever want to springboard into something, go for it. But my first one is the largest cardinal sin that a horror movie can make, much like a bad comedy. This thing is not scary. Not once was I ever scared, concerned, uncomfortable, or in the case of this being an Exorcist sequel, offended by how blasphemous it can get. There isn't a your mother sucks cocks in hell moment or a let Jesus fuck you moment. There is nothing here. The kids say nothing to mess with their parents' heads or mess with the priests' heads. They do nothing. I fully understand that the original Exorcist really works based off of the time period that it was made in. The world was still a very Christian society in the 70s, and the movie played to those fears. And to hear a little girl saying stuff like that in a movie wasn't, I'd argue, can still be shocking if you've never even seen the movie. There's nothing but generic jump scares here that do not work. The only scene that was even kind of trying is even Jeremy Johns pointed this out in his review, to give him credit, is when Angela is being put to bed and Leslie Odom Jr.'s character is just talking to her, trying to console her after she's been found. You see a super quick glimpse of her being possessed by the demon, and it should have just been purely quiet, but hey, that was cool. That's the only time in this movie where it even kind of gets you. Even when the girls are possessed, they don't say or do anything you haven't seen in every other possession movie. The inverted cross on Catherine's head, yeah, as a Deicide fan and a massive Behemoth fan, that isn't making me cower. It's just making me go, seen it. To the point where you're just even numb to it by the end of the movie. And that's kind of insulting that it's just your standard run-of-the-mill exorcism script that's marketed as a direct sequel to The Exorcist.
About that, this is where, and I'm sorry if I'm stealing one of your points, but can we talk about why Ellen Burstyn is in this movie?
Oh, I have a large point that I would love to make about this. You know what? I'm even just going to move it up on my priority list. Fuck it. Fuck this movie. uh this one hurts to say because knowing how great of an actor Ellen Burstyn is, like I genuinely think that we should just retroactively give her an Oscar for the original or for Requiem for a Dream even. Like even knowing that she purposefully avoided coming back for Exorcist 2 at all, to where she's written out in a one-off line in that movie, the way she's handled in this thing is a fucking travesty. Like it's insulting. From the line why she wasn't allowed in the room to watch the demon being removed from Regan, to the way she's taken out of the movie. Like I know a lot of people still get riled up about Luke Skywalker in The Last Jedi to this day.
I was gonna say that that like is tame compared to how Chris is dealt with in this movie.
Oh, I was also just going to say, Star Wars nerds, get out of your basement and quit crying about The Last Jedi. Try getting a day job and going on a date for a change. You know, get real fucking lives. But I digress. The way Luke Skywalker comes back into the mix in the Star Wars universe at least made sense. Him knowing how powerful the Force could be, so much so that the son of his best friend and sister betrayed and killed all the Jedi again, that he chose to go into hiding and knows that this is too big for the galaxy's own good. I'm not training any more Jedi. I'm not training Rey. Fuck it. Vanish off the face of the earth. That makes sense. Here, it's literally just a famous actor, after her daughter is possessed, dedicates the rest of her life to studying exorcism, and that's her entire character for the last 50 years. And I know I mentioned this briefly earlier. On top of the condescending line about Father Merrin and Karras, yeah, that's just badly written dialogue and just badly handled to begin with.
Want to read what TV Tropes had to say about this?
Oh, go for it.
So the line from Chris about her being barred from Reagan's exorcism feels ill-judged at best and utterly ludicrous at worst, shoehorning a contemporary buzzword in with little consideration. It's also utterly insulting to the two men who gave their lives, worse in the case of Father Karras, to save her child.
Yeah, exactly. And just knowing the fact that it's undermining 3 just feels more insulting too. And just the way she gets taken out by the forgettable kid stabbing her eyes out with a crucifix, it just feels like they did her dirty at the end of the day. Like, you could even crowbar her out of this movie and you really would not miss that much. And the less I say about Linda Blair's cameo in this, the better. It really just feels mandated and also been crowbarred out of it, which is a shame because I love both of these two in the original. I say this with nothing but love for both of them. And like, if I ever met Linda Blair at a convention, I would just, fanboy over how much I love the original Exorcist. But like, how great it would have been to see them both in a much better movie. Like, I'll get to that in a minute. But it just feels like such a wasted opportunity bringing these two back.
And here's the final point before we move on to something else. The fact that she only came back because A, they doubled their offer, and B, that money is going towards her setting up an actor's scholarship. It makes it pretty clear that she's not really giving 110% to this performance. She really is just there for the paycheck.
I mean, she deserves it, but at the same time.
Yeah. Without question, she deserves to get her bag. I'm just saying, like, if it feels shoehorned in, it's because it pretty much is.
So on to another topic. So remember, Mike, how I was saying I'd actually argue The Exorcist is a very pro-religion movie, that it portrays the faith very well, but still has this ominous undertone of evil to it?
I know where you're going with this.
Well, I'm going to be very blunt with this next point. This movie's fucking preachy. No
Yep.
joke. I'll use one character as my target for this point. And this is a shame because I really liked Anne Dowd in Hereditary as well, but most of her character just spews out Bible quotes throughout the runtime. Like, I understand it. She's supposed to be this prospective nun that had a miscarriage but couldn't become one because she lost her child and it was considered an abortion, because that makes fucking sense. But to go back to the original, we don't really get to know her character as a person. We spent most of the first chunk of The Exorcist getting to know Damien Karras. We got to know Father Dyer. We got to know Burke Dennings. We got to know even Kinderman in the first movie. Hell, we get more time with the maids and caretakers at the McNeil home. Here, most of the characters are here just to speak in faith quotes that you can find on Google being rehosted on Facebook every day by your weird family members. I mean, even down to the epilogue at the end, it just feels like hand-holding for the audience. It doesn't feel like something that's ominous, because remember, this is establishing a new trilogy. But for me, it all just feels really preachy and safe.
Yeah, hard to really disagree with that, and I honestly don't remember much about any of the other characters in this movie. That's how little impact they made on me overall.
Like, I'll be brief with this and kind of piggyback off of what you just said. The characters throughout this entire movie are super underdeveloped. Most of the other characters, like, for example, again, Catherine's family, we learn absolutely nothing about them beyond their religious talking heads who immediately jump to the conclusion that their daughters are possessed because their feet look burned, and then they say, oh, it's because they've been down to the fires of hell. It's like, you're jumping to that conclusion. We literally spent most of the original movie just trying to figure out what was even wrong with Regan. The exorcism was a last resort, and even Damien didn't want to do it. Even the suggestion of Father Marin was purely just based off of him coming back from Iraq because of the ominous demon statue and finding the necklace there. That's the reason why he ends up doing it. If Father Marin doesn't come into the picture, the demon's not coming out of Regan, because Damien's sure as shit not going to do it because he doesn't even believe in it. Like, even the other characters in Believer, who are supposed to be these practitioners of other religions, they all just kind of show up and bring absolutely nothing to the table other than to spew more religious quotes at the audience. We learn nothing about their background, the relationships to the main characters. It's just, we need other faiths involved in this already somehow overcrowded movie to fill up the runtime.
Yeah, and like, to go off of that, it kind of feels like there are like elements of this movie that feel they feel kind of like forced because this is a sequel. Like the fact that there are instead of just one girl who gets possessed, it's two. Instead of mostly focusing on the Catholic Church, it's either Catholic or Christian, but either way, now we have like, you know, multiple different religions involved. Like, I think one of the biggest mistakes of this movie is adding too much that doesn't really add to the narrative.
Yeah, I'm gonna back you up and agree on that. To kind of tie it into my next point, I don't think this movie needed to suck. And
No.
before anybody says anything, no, it honestly didn't need to. Again, going back to his 2018 Halloween reboot, I'm not just going to sit here and dunk on David Gordon Green. I will dunk on Scott Teems for being an awful writer, just judging based off of Halloween Kills and this movie.
Hold on, before you get there, I do want to clarify. Teams only did the story. He's not actually credited for the screenplay.
It really does feel like it could have used another few drafts, though.
Fair.
Yeah, bear in mind, I do think David Gordon Green does need to have a better team of writers who understand how to make this movie uplifting, but at the same time, have it be throughout the entirety of the runtime, be scary and evil, and be something that's going to appease fans of the original while also setting up potential sequels. What I would personally do, trim a lot of these characters out of the movie, give it a good solid rewrite, and honestly, I wrote this in, I want to say, about an hour. This is a very rough paragraph. Mike, cool if I springboard with this one?
Go ahead.
So what I'm going to do in my version of this movie is we're making Leslie Odom Jr.'s character a preacher who goes to Haiti with his wife to spread the word of God, but she is killed in the 2010 earthquake. We still cut to 13, maybe 14 years later, but now he's lost his faith and become an atheist in that time, maybe even make him pro-abortion for all we know. I don't know, but he's still dealing with the loss of his wife and trying to raise his daughter. You say, Nick, this is the same exact movie. And nope. Because now we only focus on the one family. Angela can still go missing, deciding to skip school and go to the abandoned church, maybe try to do some kind of a ritual, maybe play with a Ouija board, maybe do something demonic that would allow an entity to come into her. Maybe even for a little fan service, have her see the statue that Marin sees in the original, and we can still have her become possessed the same way. This time looking more like how Regan looked, rather than just somebody cosplaying as Glenn Benton from Deicide. But this time, instead of a nurse nun reject, we have a character who is a pastor in the exact same role as our lead. This character can convince Leslie Odom Jr. to regain his faith, but knows something seriously evil is going beyond this. Maybe they can consult a book. I don't know. Maybe have it be written by Regan and Chris, just to kind of give it a little extra fan service into the mix. Let these characters stand on their own merit. Add Angela saying more blasphemous, evil shit to her dad, to the priest, to everybody in the room, especially if you want to have the whole multiple religions aspect. Try having her say something so evil that it's straight off of a Behemoth album. Maybe reciting something from the Satanic Bible or something from the various forms of Satanism. The back half of the movie, though, has to be a build-up to the exorcism as a last resort option, much like the original. But the exorcism itself can only be the last 20 minutes to half an hour. The demon can leave Angela and go into one of the preachers, but now the priest doesn't get the chance to kill himself. They're institutionalized. The last chunk of the movie, they're being tormented by another voice. If you really want to get fan servicey with the ending, maybe spend a little bit of extra money, have the other evil voice be Brad Dourif as the Gemini killer. Cut to credits. We'll see you in 2 years for the sequel.
I will say this, like, if that was the movie I saw last weekend, I would probably be in the theater at least 3 more times.
One of the things that I always tell people about remakequels is that one of the bad faith arguments I always found about The Force Awakens, to go back to using a Star Wars analogy here, is that if you're doing a remakequel that's a direct sequel to the movies that people had already liked, what you're supposed to do is still make it familiar. Like, yeah, I know some of the bad faith arguments. Oh, Force Awakens is just New Hope. Force Awakens is just New Hope. No, it fucking isn't. If you actually listened to the dialogue and paid attention to what was happening beyond just some of the basic plot beats, it's more than just a New Hope clone. With this movie, if the writers had focused on, okay, we can play off the same plot beats, but have the ending be a deviation to set up these two more movies that we're going to eventually go make, because Universal and Peacock spent like God knows how much money to get this franchise.
400 million.
Thank you. Like, what I wrote in an hour, like, I genuinely wish that was the movie we could have gotten. It would have been familiar, but something new to some extent at the same time. For me, just what we ended up seeing really didn't work. Like, I don't remember one bit of memorable dialogue. Again, nothing scared me. The characters are preachy as hell and just caricatures. Yeah, the acting is good here, but they can only do so much with the material.
Yeah, I agree with that. And going back to a point that I think we both had about David Gordon Green is like, he's not at all a bad filmmaker. In fact,
No, not at all.
but here's the other thing. Something that he does kind of have in common with William Friedkin is they're not necessarily like experts in horror. In fact, I'd say genre-wise, they both have a pretty diverse filmography, but like they are really good at character-driven stories. And I think that's what disappointed me the most about this, is that the characters just aren't there.
Yeah, and that's the thing about The Exorcist, is that it really is a character-driven horror series. Like, I hear a lot of people nowadays saying that, oh, the original could have been made by A24. I wouldn't go to that extent, but I can 100% see why the original would have won the Oscars that it did back in the 70s. And then with 3, it feels like a proper continuation, but it still feels different enough that it feels like something that you would want to go back to on repeat viewings.
It
Even
reminds
Exorcist-
me of it reminds me of 3 reminds me a lot of Doctor Sleep in terms of how it connects to the original.
That's actually really good. A really good way to think about it. I didn't think about it offhand, mostly just because Doctor Sleep is just so recent, and at least Exorcist 3, it's from William Peter Blatty. It's still being made within the family. So, I mean, yeah, I don't know why I didn't connect those dots like you did.
Also, for those who don't know, the book that Exorcist 3 was based on is just called Legion, and that's kind of also where I made the Doctor Sleep connection.
Yeah, that's fair, because Blatty did want this just to be called Legion rather than Exorcist 3. Like, we could go into all of the issues with the studio interference and everything, but, you know, if you want that, just go look up the Wikipedia page. Back on Believer, though, I don't really have that much to say about it. Like, the biggest crime about it is that, again, as a fan of the original, going into this with tempered expectations, I still walked away disappointed with it. Somehow it ended up being worse with that in mind, and I walked away from it pretty much more upset with it than I had expected it to be. For me, this really should be an instructional guide on how not to do a legacy sequel. Like, I cannot recommend this unless you're absolutely a diehard fan for The Exorcist like I am, but even I won't own the Blu-ray or 4K for this one once it's out. Like, there's already a Blu-ray and 4K announced for it, and it hasn't even been in theaters for a month yet.
Oh yeah, that's par for the course when it comes to Universal. Ever since COVID, they've had this thing where, like, after like a few weeks, if a movie makes less than 50 million, you'll see it on VOD and streaming pretty much by the end of the month.
Yeah, and I guess that's just what's the most upsetting thing about it, is just that you could literally take all of the characters and callbacks to the original, and it could literally just be any generic exorcism movie. And that's the biggest insult of all. Like, I'm going to be honest. I saw this movie opening night. Thankfully, I didn't pay money for it. Thank you, Cineplex Scene Card. But I don't remember very much of it. And I only just saw it 2 weeks ago.
I've seen it in like I'm still only like 4 or 5 days removed, and most of the movie has left my brain.
To kind of go back to using Jeremy Johns as to just quote him nonstop. Like, this really is it's not awful, but you'll forget it in T-1 day, and boom, already forgot about it. Like, even from a morbid curiosity standpoint, this really, it's just not worth seeing. I would say if you really are dead bent on seeing it, just wait for it to come to Amazon Prime or Netflix. You're better off not spending money to go see it. I'd honestly just fire up Shudder or AMC Plus if you have either and just watch Exorcist 3. Or in my case, go get the awesome Scream Factory 4K that just came out for it back in March of this year. Even the original Exorcist got a 4K release, I want to say about a month ago, and just go pick that up instead. And plus, we've got better horror movies that came out. Like, that's kind of the insulting thing, is that the Saw sequel is better than the Exorcist sequel.
I will agree with that 100%. I don't know if you actually saw the Saw X, but yeah, I can say with certainty that that is a better movie than Exorcist Believer.
I haven't seen it yet, mostly just because I'm not a diehard for the Saw movies, but you know what? It's getting positive reviews. I'm sure I'll check it out eventually, but just with all of that in mind, despite me really not liking this, like, the main thing that I just want to say is that due to my hatred of how Star Wars fanboys like to behave online, cough geeks and gamers, even though this is a lousy legacy sequel, and I know some people might act like I'm just going, it's an abomination. Like, it's just a forgettable movie. It's a forgettable movie in the same series that's a direct sequel to my favorite horror movie of all time, potentially even my favorite movie of all time. I love The Exorcist. That's never going to change. Regardless of how many forgettable sequels we get, that can never take away from how much of a masterpiece that movie is. I just want to stress that to the people listening right now.
Yeah, I think that's fair. Now, I do want to ask before we wrap this up, do you have any intention of watching the rest of this trilogy, or are you just going to stick with the original and Exorcist 3?
It depends on how the next movie reviews. I'm just going to wait for the Rotten Tomatoes score to come out, and I'll make my judgment then. If Scott Teems is still involved, I will probably wind up skipping it. But beyond that, like, again, I have no interest in picking this up to be a completionist for my Blu-ray and 4K collection. I will, again, just wait for the reviews for the next one to come out. Or, if we even get Exorcist Deceiver in 2025 for that matter, because looks like it's only made $90 million at the box office. So, like, yeah, it's made its budget back, but I don't think it's the super hit that Universal is wanting it to be.
Yeah, the future of this is really in a precarious state, because not only is it not really lighting up the box office, but like, critics aren't loving it, audiences aren't loving it. Nobody is really going to be talking about it beyond spooky season. It's
even in terms of spooky season, there's better stuff that you could be watching. I mean, like, even Suitable Flesh, that's getting a limited release at least, and that's reviewing better and people are liking that better.
So yeah, ultimately Exorcist Believer is just it's just a dud.
Yeah, again, it's not worth your time. We don't recommend you see it. Just, if anything, just wait for the Terrifier 2 re-release on November 1st. You're going to be better off, or just waiting until Halloween to watch, classic horror movies. Or if you want to watch something that's newer, go watch No One Will Save You again on Disney Plus. Get a Shudder subscription and watch anything that Joe Bob is doing. Like, there's better things that you could be doing than seeing this movie, and it's a shame.
Oh, and since I brought up Mike Flanagan earlier, he's got a new Netflix series, Fall of the House of Usher. As of this recording, I haven't seen it yet, but by the time this episode's up, I will probably have binged the whole series. So yeah, give that a watch instead.
Or even just to kind of throw this out there, even this is kind of a better, I don't want to say possession movie necessarily, but it is kind of hinted at and just kind of kept up in the air. Like, I even sent you a message about this, I want to say about 2-3 weeks ago, maybe. Just go watch The Devil's Candy. It's on Shudder, and it has a kick-ass metal soundtrack, and it's super scary. Like, just watch that instead. Even that does a potential possession plot line, and I say potential possession as in go watch this movie and you'll understand what I'm saying, just because it's that good.
And I believe with that, that's our cue to wrap. So before we get out of here, Nick, where can everyone find you online?
Super Saiyan Death Metal God on Instagram. I mostly post album covers, movies I'm watching, video games I'm playing, concerts I go to. And yeah, just go shoot me some binge likes. I'm currently close to getting to 3,000 followers at the moment, so any support is appreciated there.
Awesome. And you guys can find me on various social media at Captain K42. You can check out my quick thoughts on letterboxd.com/CoachK42. And you can follow Renegade Pop Culture on Facebook and that place at Ren Pop Culture. You can also find us on YouTube, on Podchaser, subscribe to our Patreon at patreon.com/Renegade Pop Culture. Listen to all of our podcasts on Spotify, Apple Podcasts, wherever you listen. And last but not least, everything can be found at renegadepopculture.com. Need an escape? So do we. That'll do it for this episode of Renegade Marquee. We will catch you guys later. Nick, take us out.
This was not an excellent day for an exorcism.